Hello and welcome to our RHDev front-end training intro to React. So for today's lesson, we'll be covering about what is React, why do we use React, and how do we use React. So firstly, what is React? So this is a video on the slides. You can go and watch on your own in your free time.
React, a JavaScript library for...
So what is React? So React is basically a JavaScript framework that is used to build reusable UI components. So it's initially developed by and maintained by Facebook, and everything is written in React. Everything is written on JavaScript or TypeScript. So we have HTML. We'll write, like, for example, normally front end will write HTML and CSS. Like, we need HTML and CSS, right? But for React, we can write the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all within JavaScript itself. So with this, it provides a seamless integration of HTML with JavaScript and a wide range of useful libraries that we can use within JavaScript. So you might be wondering, why do we use React? Why do we use React, or why do we even use JavaScript along with HTML and CSS? So basically, JavaScript has a close relationship with the web. So JavaScript is also known as the programming language of the web, and it is powered like almost like most of the website you have in the internet. So JavaScript is a logic-based programming language, while HTML, CSS are markup languages. So to simply put, HTML, CSS are dead languages. They just indicate stuff, and they don't do any like processing or running anything, while JavaScript is like any other programming language. You can use it to calculate stuff and process stuff. So what JavaScript does is it modifies the web content and make it behave in different ways that we want it to be. So there's a common saying that JavaScript is the brain of the website. So HTML is the skeleton, so it defines the structure and the content of the website. CSS is the skin, so it makes the website looks beautiful, looks pretty instead of like plain text. Then JavaScript is the brain of the website, which allows the website to do stuff like, for example, when I click a button, it will do this, do that. So JavaScript and the web. So how is JavaScript used along with HTML and CSS? So what we have is, on one hand, we have JavaScript libraries. So libraries are like predefined functions that allow us to modify HTML and CSS code. So for example, we have jQuery, which is like the OG the JavaScript library for web dev, and then we have GCS. Then on the other hand, we have frameworks such as React.js and Angular. So frameworks or libraries are like, they provide useful functions. A framework acts as a foundation of the application. So that means to say, like, everything is done on the framework instead of like, so the framework itself is like the basis of rendering and everything. So for example of a library is jQuery. So as I said, this is the most common used to be the most common, I think perhaps the most common method. So you can see these are all JavaScript code, and this JavaScript code, what do they do is they modify the HTML and CSS code. So for example, when the user clicks the add button, right, this function will basically append a list item into the HTML, and which you can see over here, it appears here. Then over here is the same to-do list, but implemented on React. So if you can see, right, the first thing you might realize that how come there's like HTML-ish looking thing in React. So basically, like what I've said previously, you can write HTML and CSS code within JavaScript itself when you use React. So it is, as you can see, there's also like, you can also use JavaScript variables such as this val over here within like the HTML, which will be called like JSX, and also like define items and add it here. So yes, as you might realize, there's no HTML or CSS within React itself, because all the HTML are written inline in JavaScript as JSX. And as for CSS, we use the library start components that allows us to write CSS classes in JavaScript and export them for use with JSX. Then, since all HTML and CSS code are written in JavaScript files, classes and variables can be exchanged freely between three languages. So for example, you declare a variable, then you can use this variable within like the CSS and also the HTML, which you'll see later on as I demonstrate. So now, without further delay, we'll just demo how to start with React. So React is builds upon components. So a component is basically a function that returns a JSX component. So for example, a function can be like called a button. So this button function will return a JSX, like it will return the HTML code for a button alongside with the JavaScript code and CSS that comes with it. So a React component must be used within a .jsx or .tsx file. Yeah, .tsx is for TypeScript. Then code written after the return keyword are all in JSX, and anywhere else in the function, normal JavaScript can be written. So JavaScript JSX syntax is almost the same as HTML. It's just that you can, in addition to HTML, you can also write like JavaScript code in it by encapsulating them within curly braces over here. Like so, for example, here you can see a function, right? So a function, they return a value, then the value will be rendered within JSX as normal HTML. So now I will just demonstrate how to use React. Okay, so assuming that you have Node and everything installed, Node and Yarn installed in your computer, you can just simply run npx create React app, my app template. Okay, so once everything is done, you can just cd into the file, which is create my app, and you can just open the file in VS Code. And for those who can't seem to make it run here, y'all can also go to this tscreate React app repo in our RHDev organization and clone the code here. So it's basically the same as when you run the tscreate React app here. So once I create React app, you can just navigate to app.tsx. Okay, then open the terminal. Open the terminal and run yarn start. So when we first run yarn start, you'll realize this. So this is the default code. So what we'll do is we'll just remove everything. We'll just remove everything first. Okay, so we'll also remove this class name thing. So I have this. So when you save the file, right, you'll update automatically. So as you see, right, this function app is a so-called a React component, and it returns basically JSX. So it's basically just your plain HTML. So that means you can just type anything you like. So like div hello div hi. So this is basically how just JSX. Then if you might realize that if I remove like that, right, there'll be a compilation error, because anything that is like in return, right, it must all be contained within one parent tag. So you have to put it like that, then you can do it. So next, so we have HTML in React already. So you might be wondering how do we write our CSS code? So for our CSS code, what we'll do is we'll use the library called start components. So for this, we'll need to install start components. So you'll just type yarn add start components at 3.0. Yeah, so this at 3.0 is important because somehow like later versions of start components is not compatible with React. So you just run this, wait for it to install. Okay, so once done already, what we can do, you can declare something called a start component. So you put const start div equals to styled dot div. So this is basically a backtick. So okay, so you have start, right, so we just import from start components. Yeah, then so what do we do is, so this is how the syntax of start div works, start components work. So it's start.div or any like HTML tag would work. Then these are backticks, so anything you write here is basically just a string. So what we can do is, let's say we want to okay, let's do something like that. Start div. So we make height a start div, then let's say we want it to be of a width equal 100 pixels, height equals to 100 pixels. Then maybe we want to make it a background so that we can see cyan. Then we'll see next, and we'll see a box. So basically anything you write here is basically just CSS. Then okay, so let's create another start component for the title. So title equals to start.h1. Okay, okay, so now we have something green. Okay, so now we have a start div. Maybe make it bigger, maybe remove the color. Okay, so now what we want to do is we'll see how we write how do we write other JavaScript code. So for example, let's declare a variable called value. So let's value equals to 32. Then over here, right, instead of high, right, we put value. So right, if anything that is in JavaScript, we put it between curly braces, so we'll get like this 32. Then it can be like any number you like, you can even like do math, anything, so, or string. So yeah, so this is how it works. So for now, let's do some thing. So let's make this mutable variable. So let value equals to 1. Then we'll create a button, press me. And so what does this button will do, right? We put a parameter on with a value on click equals to on click. So on click, we'll let it be a function. Click equals to so what we have to do is we'll just want to console log value. So right, if you open your Okay, actually I should put this below here. It looks nicer. Then I should also put this, makes this a display. Okay, so it's now nicer. Then okay, if you were to press inspect element, right, when I click on this button, you realize that the number, the value over here will be printed. So let's do something. So we also want to make on click do something to increment the value by 1. So what we do is value plus plus. So right, when you do this, when you see the console, whenever you click, the value will increment. So that's good lah. However, right, you might realize that how come on the website this number never change? So we have to introduce something new to you. There's a special to React, which is called a hook. So hooks. So what is a hook? So basically, to put it simple, we'll use a hook is basically a function that allows us to. It's a React function that allows us to put it simply to communicate with with React and to modify to access its state. So we are using a hook called a useState. So useState is basically a hook that allows us to access the state variables in React. So right, just now we have the let value function. The value is a JavaScript variable. However, like React doesn't recognize it. React only recognizes React state variables. So if you want to make a variable understandable to React, we need to make it a state variable. So a state variable is basically a variable that React keeps track of. And so how do we implement this? So let's go back to our React, and what we'll do is we'll remove value and we'll create a const value set value. We'll use state 1. So we'll, and okay, as per usual, let's import useState, and we'll remove this. So basically value is the value of the state. Then this is the default value will be 1. Then set value will be the function that we will use to change the value of value. So for example, in this case, we'll put set value plus 1. So once this is done, right, you'll realize when you click, it will increment normally. So this is how useState is used in React. Then next we'll have introduced another thing called useEffect. So useEffect is basically another hook. And what does useEffect does is that it helps us to run code. If you want to have any code to run, when you will run code whenever like the page is loaded, it's either loaded or refreshed, then you will run the code. Or whenever there's any of its listening function, state values are being changed. So what do I mean by that is that you see there are two parameters in useEffect. Firstly is the function to be run, and secondly is the array. So the array takes in an array of state variables that useEffect listens to. So for example, whenever you update one of these state variables, like for example you call a set that value and that value changes, useEffect will be triggered and the function in here will run. Okay, so let's demonstrate. So for example, right, we use const useEffect. Okay, I'll just use a useEffect snippet for here as a shorthand. Then as usual, we shall import useEffect. Wait, did I get the Okay, yeah, there's no cons. Bad. So this is how it works. So let's say we'll put this console log hello. So if you realize, whenever the web page is loaded, it will print hello. Then if I refresh it, then it will print hello again. So that's the basically what it means. Then next, what we can do, right, is we can put a listener value to it. So when we put value to here, what we do is whenever we click on the button, we are setting value to value +1. So whenever value +1 updates, right, value updates, so this function over here will run. So you'll realize that the more I click, right, it will more hello it will appear. And so this in summary what use effect does. Okay, so lastly, as we have seen before, just now I've demonstrated how stock component works. So stock component is basically a library that allows us to write actual CSS code into JavaScript. And okay, lastly, let's go beyond the basics of what we have covered today. So beyond what we have covered today in React, there's also other hooks such as use params and use memo, and there's also there's a lot of JavaScript libraries out there. So there's like ANTD, which is used for UI components, Axios for APIs, and React Hook Form for making forms and so on. So it's impossible to know everything. So you all need to learn how to read documentations and learn on your own. So and lastly, a small tip that if you are in doubt, like when you are working on React app, like the RH app, then if you are in doubt, you can always refer to existing code and see how people have done it before. And with that, we would like to end the lesson for today.